Studies have consistently shown that setting high and specific goals increase performance. So when did sales leaders abandon goal setting? Oh, and no, your sales quota doesn't count. This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Welcome to Sales Untraining. I'm Kelly Riggs. So good to have you as a part of the podcast. I hope you'll take a moment to like and subscribe the podcast. It is your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. No doubt about that. And listen, it's great to have you in the conversation. I hope you'll share this with someone that you think needs to join in as we talk about all the challenges that exist with traditional sales training. Yeah, it's not good. Well, not because I say so, because the data says so. When roughly 5 or 6% of all salespeople are elite, another, say, 15 to 17% are pretty good, but could be better with training and coaching. That means 3 out of 4 are not doing that great. In fact, the data says the bottom 25% are, to use one of my phrases, a dumpster fire. Hopeless is the actual phrase they use. So we talk about how we train salespeople and why it creates an enormous amount of unforced errors. What I want to talk about in this episode is goal setting. Listen, when I came up in the sales profession like 1,000 years ago, seems that way back in the 80s, I grew up with a whole set of speakers like Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and so many others that consistently talked about goal setting and how important it was to have written specific goals so that you could perform at your very, very best. And I got to thinking about this the other day. I just don't hear this as a topic of discussion much anymore. I mean, it hasn't disappeared entirely, but pretty close. I don't see it as a regular part of sales training curriculum inside of companies. I don't see companies sitting down in workshops and talking about what do you want to accomplish? What's important to you? Why do you have this job? What are you driving toward? What are you trying to accomplish? For most salespeople, there is something specific that drives them, and they're in sales for a lot of reasons. And typically one of those reasons is they don't want to be limited by what they can earn, by what they can achieve, by the amount of flexibility and independence that they have. And those things are big drivers of performance. They're motivators. What most companies rely on today is, here's your quota. Yes, fantastic. Great job last year, record-setting year. Here's your new quota, plus 15, 18, 20%. Go get them. Yeah, that's highly motivating. Is that what your team does? Do you pass down the new quota and expect people to get motivated to hit that? Come in and punch the clock and strive to reach your number? Now, I'm going to suggest to you that quota is not really a goal. It's not an objective that matters to them per se, that it's got to relate to something important. Listen, when I was coming up in the sales world, there were a lot of things that motivated people. I'll tell you what motivated me. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be considered the best. And so I cared about who was number one. I cared about the top rung of the ladder. What does that number look like? Who has it? Because I want to talk with them. I want to find out what they've done, because ultimately I want to go buy them. Who's at the top of the list? I can remember reading the book I Am Third years ago. It was sort of the book that led to the story about Brian Piccolo, Brian's song. I don't know if you ever saw it. Millennials, Google it. It's a tearjerker. You're going to want to watch it. It's amazing. Gale Sayers was a phenom, and he went to the University of Kansas. They called him the Kansas Comet. He went on to set records at Chicago, playing for the Chicago Bears. Scored 7 touchdowns in a single game. Yes, he did. On a muddy football field, by the way, long before we were doing turf. I mean, he was the epitome of greatness. But there's a story in the book, I Am Third, in which Gale Sayers, it's his autobiography, says, when I got to the University of Kansas, I went in and asked the director of athletic information, whatever they call it, the sports director for the football team, where are all the records? And he got the records for the most yardage and the most touchdowns and all these things. He said, I cut them out and I put them on my wall and I wrote a little sign above them that said, these must go. He was hyper driven by reaching a new standard. But it is very difficult to reach a new standard that you don't know exists. And that has led me to say something to sales teams and to leadership teams. And it's this: no one runs their best race if they don't know where the finish line is. Defining the finish line is critical. Zig Ziglar talked about it all the time. See You at the Top, one of the key books that he, among many that he wrote and that I read and that I bought into, that if I want to reach the very pinnacle of what my capabilities are, I need to stretch for all that I can get. I need to push just a little beyond what I think I'm capable of. And when I reach that, I realize I'm capable of much, much more. But it is that goal that matters to me that drives my behavior, that causes me to want to stretch, to do more, to reach further. And so I always had written goals. Now, let me caveat that with this. A written goal without a plan is a disaster waiting to happen. It's a train wreck, right? Because you can put up all these lofty goals, but then the question becomes, how do I get there? But make no mistake, defining that finish line is absolutely critical. And we just don't do that. Instead, typically, we provide quotas and we say, this is your goal, this is your objective, except that it's not generated by me. One of the things that I did, I'd really like to hear what you think about this. It worked well for me, but when I was a sales manager, I didn't set my salespeople's goals for them. I didn't say, here's your quota for the year. Congratulations, you did X, Y, or Z last year. Here's your new increased quota. This is your new goal, your new objective. I never did that. Now, my boss, I was a regional manager. My boss came down and said, congratulations, here's your new quota. But I knew that by doing it differently and appealing to my people to decide what their own personal goal was, that I could make my objective, my quota from the company work. And that's what I did. I would say, all right, I want you to assess your current sales, your capability, your pipeline, where you think you can go, and I want you to tell me what your new quota is. What? Yes, you tell me what your new quota is. You know, you would think, Kelly, that's just ridiculous. I mean, what your salespeople are going to do is sandbag and they're going to lowball and all that. Do you know consistently that didn't happen? Consistently, it did not happen. In fact, the opposite happened. I would say, okay, fantastic. I'm excited to see your plan, excited to see your number. Let's start there. What do you think your quota needs to be? And it would be some astronomical number. They did $1.5 million last year. It's like, I'm doing 2.3 this year. I'm like, okay, wow. First, congratulations. Now, show me the plan that gets you there. See, that's the difference. Show me the plan that gets you there. I want to know the specific pipeline, the specific targets, what their potential is, why you think you can win these. Show me how you're going to get there. More often than not, I'm pulling them back down off the ledge. I'm like, 2.3, that's substantial. But I'm thinking based on your plan, I see you getting to 1.9, 2.1, and look at what it's going to do for you. Let's talk about what this number does for you. How much money do you make? Why is that important to you? What will you do with it? In many ways, this process was like selling to a client, uncovering that pain point and revealing what's important to the buyer and helping them see the benefit of getting there. And that's what I did. And routinely, not because of me, because I had talented people. I mean, we crushed it. We crushed our numbers. You know, the last corporate job I had, we got together and we were measured on units and revenue sold. And I got the team together and said, what do you guys think we can do? What's the number? What do we want to shoot for? And hands would go up. We need to do X. This is what we need to do. I'd say, great. Tell me why. Why is that important? And somebody else would go, I don't think that's high enough. Wait a minute. Let's temper that. Maybe that's a little too aggressive. We've only done this and that. But by the time I'm done, we've settled on a number. It's our number. It's our goal. And we break it down into chunks, manageable bites that we can go conquer. And we can do that. And it's not me putting a quota on them. It's them driving the performance of their individual sales efforts for their own individual benefit because it means something to them personally. You hear it said a lot. It's their purpose. It's their why. It's what motivates them. And that's a better motivator than my quota based on last year plus 15% or 20 or whatever it is. Right? That's the challenge that we're all faced with, is how do we get the best out of our people? And I want to suggest to you that you get their best when it's their decision and it's their goal and they believe in it. And more importantly, they put together a plan to get there. Some years ago, my wife decided we were going to run marathons, half marathons to be more specific, because I couldn't even conceive of running 26.2 miles for no reason whatsoever. Now, I know, look, there's a lot of you out there runners. Good for you. I'm not one of them. I love sports and I love anything that runs in short bursts. Call it baseball, football, basketball, any of those kind of things. I'm in. Long distance, forget it. I mean, I was on the track team in high school. I ran the quarter mile. Back then it was a quarter mile, not the 400 meters. Now we're all metric. All right. But I didn't run the 1 mile, the 2 mile, the cross country. Forget about that nonsense. So my wife comes to me and says, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could go out and join our kids and do half marathons together and enjoy that time? And I'm like, no, that's a terrible idea. What do you mean? But the kids are doing it. It's so fun. And we've been to watch, and I want to do it too. So I tried every excuse in the book. I mean, everything. I've got bad knees. I don't know how. I don't know how to train. I don't know what to buy. And she took all the objections away. She said, not a problem. There's this company called Fleet Feet, and they have a complete program to take you off the couch to half marathon in, I forget what it was, 4 months or 5 or something. And you don't have to do anything. They tell you exactly what shoes to wear, what gear to buy, and all you have to do is show up 5 days a week and do exactly what they tell you. Perfect plan for me, because I didn't have a plan. And secondly, if I didn't have a plan, I wasn't doing it. But you know what I could get behind? Showing up one day at a time, putting one foot in front of another, understanding that the finish line was a half marathon, something I'm completely not capable of, but I can follow the plan. Yep, you guessed it. 4 or 5 months later, whatever it was, we ran our first half marathon. Full disclosure, hated every minute of it. But I did enjoy the time with family and the camaraderie, and specifically enjoyed the breakfast that we had after every practice. That was my motivator. If I go do this silly workout, I get to go have an incredible breakfast afterwards with my wife. Good stuff, right? So goal setting. Where is it in your sales training regimen? Because let me go back to what I said before. Goals that are high, not too high, high and specific, not vague, increase performance. I mean, if you don't know what SMART goals are, S-M-A-R-T, Google it. You'll find tons of material. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. That's how you set goals. Okay, I'm not here to teach you how. I'm here to ask the question why we don't use them, because they absolutely work. But they have to be written. And Ziglar used to say it all the time. If your goals aren't written down, they're not goals. They're good ideas. They're dreams. They're wishes. You've got to not only write them down, but let me go next level. You've got to have a specific plan when you're putting those goals together. Let those goals come from your people. What is it that you want to accomplish? And connect it to something that's important to them. People want to make more money. Great. Why? Is it because they want to go on vacation, build a new house, save for a college fund, buy something extravagant, reward themselves, go on a vacation? I have no idea. But when you begin to talk about what that money will do for them and how much it takes, and talk about how we can set goals to get there, to give them what they want. And by the way, if you happen to let them set that quota number themselves, you get way more buy-in and way more effort because it's theirs. Well, coming up next, I want to talk a little bit about short-term goals and why they are very important to the success of your salespeople. Stay with me. Hey, thanks for making Sales Untraining your first listen of the week. And if you find something you like, if you hear something that's interesting, I hope you'll share it with somebody you know. You can find out more about me at bizlockerroom.com or email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Now back to the show.
The best salespeople I see out there are highly disciplined, highly accountable to themselves and their own performance. They take their skills development and leadership and service seriously, and they are always trying to figure out the tactics of wayfinding, how I move down a path together with somebody.
Oh, I mean, that's pure gold. And what I hear you saying is, instead of building a function, a job, a set of tasks, like a job description, we want to build a role with purpose. And part of that purpose is obviously selling, but it's even bigger than that. Welcome back, Sales Untraining. We're talking goals, we're talking goal setting, and you heard me say a number of times some reference to breaking long-term goals down into small bite-sized chunks. I think that's one of the real challenges with annual sales quotas. Is it's very hard for me to grasp something that's a year away. So one of the things that we always do is break that down into quarters and then take that individual quarter and look at each month as we go. What do I need to do to get to where I need to go this month? I mean, you want to break it down into a week? Fantastic. I like the monthly aggregated to a quarter. And I could look at a quarter long 3-month snapshot and really get a good sense of, are we working the plan? Can we achieve the longer term goal? Have we hit this milestone? And if not, what adjustments do we need to make to the next one? Because the goal is the goal. I was actually working with a client once upon a time. We were doing strategic planning, and I was invited to sit in on strategic planning review meetings that existed at the time. And I noticed that everybody was coming in and writing down their number. In other words, we're supposed to call it $20 million this quarter. We're not going to make it. We're only going to do 18.5. So we're going to mark it down, and we're going to mark down our annual. Why? Why don't you adjust Q2, 3, and 4 to absorb the difference? Interesting conversation. There's a lot of depth behind it, and the way you deal with goals is incredibly important to whether or not they have the intended positive effect. You can't use them as a hammer. You can't. The word stretch goals makes my head explode. I'm not a fan of stretch goals. You know why? Because all of the instances, and I do mean all of them, all of the instances where someone has stretch goals, the stretch goal is the goal. Oh yeah, we're working towards the stretch goal. Well, then that's the goal. It's just that simple. So we send a mixed message to people, and they come up with their own objective, and then we stretch that goal up a little higher, and suddenly it's not theirs anymore. We could talk about that for days. But I will tell you that my experience, and my experience in running a half marathon was a really good example. I couldn't get my mind around running a half marathon. 13 miles? I mean, I've never run more than, I want to say 6 or 7 miles at any given time in my life. And that was way back in high school in track. And it was miserable, just hated it. Now you want me to run 13, you want me to like it, you want me to enjoy it, you want me to do it on a Saturday morning with a good attitude. No, I don't think so. So what do you have to do? Well, we have to first see if we can run a 5K, a 3 miler, a little over 3 miles. Let's run that and let's figure out the time that makes sense. And then let's stretch that out to a 10K and let's do 6 miles. See how that works. Then let's talk about doing a 15K. And so we're working up to the 3 miles, then we're working up from 3 to 6. And okay, wow, I did that. Reasonable time. And it didn't kill me. I didn't die. Might have felt like it once in a while, but no. And then now, I went out and ran the Tulsa Run 15K, which is just a touch over 9 miles. And I ran that in about 90 minutes, and I was shocked. I mean, for some of you, you're thinking you're not a runner. No, I'm not. Okay, 10-minute miles, that's great for me. You're doing them in 7.5, 8, 8.5. You're a runner. I'm not. But by taking each of those steps along the way, suddenly at 9, I went, you know what? I think I could do this. I'm not going to share that with my wife at this point because I don't want her getting too excited. I want to do the one, and then I want to call it a day. We wound up doing 2 half marathons altogether, way more than I wanted to do. But I did them. And the point is, yes, I had the finish line, the 13.1 miles, but I can't conceive of that right now. 6 months from now, okay, you're saying I'm going to do that in 6 months? I don't believe you. I can't see it. You know what I can see? 1.5 miles today. And then running hills, and then running on the track, doing, 400 meters 10 times, all the stuff they had us do. And then 2 miles, and then 3 miles up hills, and then running a 5K for some time and going, wow, that wasn't so bad after all. And each step along the way I could get there. Well, you can do the same in setting sales objectives and setting sales goals, and you really should, because someone can get completely overwhelmed because they just can't put themselves in that position a year away. But let's talk about where we want to be in 3 months. Let's talk about that. What do we need to do between now and 90 days in order to get that much closer? Putting one foot in front of another. By the way, as an aside, this is one of the reasons why I love sales contests. Don't hear a lot about those anymore either. And I'm a huge fan. And I'm not talking about, some of the things that companies come up with that, seem completely overblown and too hard to reach and only one person wins and things like that. I'm talking about well thought out sales contests in which you involve the sales team and figure out what would be truly rewarding. What do you want? Cash? Do you want an opportunity to pick out a set of golf clubs or a 75-inch UHD TV or, one of 3 or 4 prizes you get to choose? And how do you get there? What's the behavior I want to reinforce in the sales contest? Those short-term objectives keep salespeople on track, because in case you haven't caught up, prospecting, hunting consistently for a year and working your way towards a number a year away is a slog. I mean, it is a marathon. It's summit Mount Everest type of stuff. So distractions that make things fun, that make it meaningful, that give me something to focus on are really substantially helpful in terms of going the distance. There are so many ways to structure sales contests to make it meaningful to the company and to the salespeople, and to give more than one person an opportunity to participate. I think you should explore it. But that's just me. Listen, hope you've enjoyed Sales Untraining, and I'll see you next time.
Sales Untraining is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.